So now let's go back to our variable types, and let's explore a different type, a string type. Now we just saw actually that using the toString method on any variable converts the value inside that variable into a string, so we can display it on in a message box. So strings, as you can imagine, are actually pretty useful. So what's a string? A string is a sequence of characters surrounded by double quotes. Okay. Its range is not, it doesn't matter, it's just basically any character that you can see. It takes 16 bits or 2 bytes to store each character of a string into memory. But of course a string can be as long as you want. And strings are commonly used to output information to the user. Okay, and we can use them for lots of things, and we're going to be using strings everywhere. So let's do an example of a string, and let me show you a few interesting things about strings. So back to C#. So now I'm going to leave J and I and all those guys there. Now I'm going to declare another variable, and this time it's going to be of type string. So I'm just going to type string. We'll call it S. And it turns out that you can actually you can initialize a variable when you declare it. So I can say string S equals, and then in double quotes, I'm going to give it a string. How about hello world? Just like that. And now over here, in the message box show method, I'm going to replace this J to string. I'm going to replace that with S. Now, do I need to call the toString method of S? No, because S is already a string. Now it turns out that you can actually, that there is a toString. Actually, there isn't. Or is there? ToString. Yes, there is a toString method for S, but it's really redundant for us to do that, so I'm not going to do that. Okay, so let's try it. Sure enough, hello world. So let's declare another string. I'm going to call this one T. So string T is equal to, oops, I am also a string. Okay. And now here, let's in the message box show, let's change that to a T and run it. And now it displays I am also a string. Okay, predictable. Now let's try something interesting. What do you think will happen if in the show function I actually say T plus S? Now T and S are strings, and it doesn't make sense to actually add two strings together. But let's see what happens. Well, look at that. I've got both T, I am also a string, and hello world, which was contained in S. So plus, when you add two strings together, they actually get what's called concatenated together. The second string gets tacked on to the end of the first string. So if you had two numbers, 4 and 5, and you say what's 4 plus 5, that would be the same as 5 plus 4. So when you add numbers, the addition is commutative. But when you add strings, it's not commutative. The second string gets added to the first string. So for example, I can swap the order of these guys. I can say show s plus t. And now the order has been reversed. Hello world, I am also a string. Now what about, you see here, there's no space between the exclamation mark and the I here in the middle of the string. Well, if we wanted a space in there, we can tackle it two ways. We could either insert a space after hello world, right? Or we can insert a space before I am also a string. Or we can just add a space directly in the show function call. Watch this. So we have s plus, and then I'm going to just put a literal. Remember literal values? They are what they are. They are literally what they show up to be in the code. Now I've got s. I'm going to tack onto it a space, and then I'm going to tack onto it the string t. So just for clarity, let me add several spaces to make sure that you can see the difference. So I'm going to build this code and run it. See, now there's quite a bit of space between the exclamation mark and the I. Alright, I think that's enough playing around with strings. Let's move on to the next common variable type. Booleans. A Boolean only takes on two values, 1 or 0, yes or no, true or false. And in C#, it takes on the values true or false. And why would you do this? Well, first of all, in memory, it takes up 1 byte, or 8 bits. And you would do it either when you're making a decision, like to check to see if one particular number is greater than another number. It either is greater than that number or it's not. Okay, true or false. Or to declare variables that represent an on-off state or a true-false state. Okay, so decision making, we're going to handle that later. But let's create a variable that has an on-off state.